Alright, what is up everybody? Today is going to be the beginning of a new series where I'll be making tier lists of ships. Yeah, I know, it's a crazy and original idea. I noticed that tier list content is not very popular on YouTube, and there are many reasons why. I know this is gonna piss off a lot of people who are going to be preying on my downfall, and if you're one of those people, then I dedicate this video to you. I swear I'm not going manic, guys. I got ops out there. So, to start off, I'm going to tell you the category that I'm going to be rating these ships on. And it's gonna be completely arbitrary. This means that I cannot be wrong. If you disagree with my tierings, it's probably because you still have much to learn. Obviously, everything's gonna be based off my experience, but I might put a ship in a higher tier just because I think they're cuter than another ship. So stay on guard and don't be too surprised when that happens. Free to choose to trust me or not, but this isn't gonna be a series where I autistically crunch numbers and address every single possible nuance just to not offend some people. That's gonna be for all of my other videos. But I'm just trying to have some fun here, alright guys? And now it is finally time to unveil the Destroyer tier list, which I have curated with help from absolutely nobody else. And here it is. Now, you might be wondering, why did you choose these ships? What about La Milan? She's my favorite. I just felt like it. For ships that I don't really care about, if they don't break at least A tier, then I'm just not going to include them. Especially because I haven't even touched a lot of the ships that I don't care for. So don't come asking me, where's the Eskimo or Z137? I don't know. If you like them, just use them. And as for the tier names, I needed 5 categories to divide up the ships, and I didn't want to start at S and then have D tier as the lowest tier because D tier sounds like absolute garbage. The ships in B tier are not bad, but I know people who go by tier lists won't care about anything lower than S anyway. But still, D tier just sounds a little bit off to me. Okay, now I'm gonna get into the ships. To kick things off, Shimokaze is the best DD in the game. I mean, who's really surprised? Let's think about all the hardest content in the game. Chapter 14 mobs, Chapter 14 bosses, Arbiter, meta fights, EX mode. If the enemy is in light armor, she's the best in every single one of them on auto, and nobody comes even close on manual. I don't think I really need to justify this any further. Next up is Anshan and Changchun. They're pretty much the same, but Anshan has slightly stronger buffs, so if you're sortieing just one of them, then obviously she's slightly stronger. They're also pretty much good everywhere that has light armored enemies because their light DPS is unmatched by all vanguards and keeps up with even SSR main fleet ships. If you use the SAP gun, then they're a top tier, even against medium, although slightly weaker than some other options. But they're the most consistent since there's no such thing as missing torps when you use them, and they will never let you down. Their only weakness is heavy armor, but that's what Shimokaze is for. And that pretty much rounds out the SSS tier. Moving on to the second tier, SS tier. First we've got Kazagumo. She contributes more than the SSS tier ships if you're using a full carrier boss fleet. But the only reason she's not up there is because she's not quite god tier against mobs, like the ships that are above her. She still has a niche in mobs if you have a carrier flagship because she actually heals quite a bit and it adds up over several fights, which usually goes unnoticed and is quite underrated. For example, back when I was first clearing Chapter 14, I would use a comp with Shinano as my flagship and then Odin on the side, and she would heal both Shinano as well as the healer by quite a bit every fight. Alright, next up are Harbin and Yudachi. Some may say that Harbin is a light cruiser and therefore should not be in a Destroyer tier list, but I may say that is fake news. The two of them are really similar, having extremely high DPS across all armor types, because they have strong guns and torps, but they don't really have the highest DPS for any specific category. Yudachi is a bit tankier, but most of the time not enough to be the tank, and Harbin helps your Vanguard survivability with her smokescreens. Also, Harbin's staggered double torps reduces overkill in mobs, which is a pretty nice bonus. Next up, we're on to the next tier, starting with Kitakaze. Her DPS can be on par with the likes of Yudachi and Harbin, but she is quite a bit squishier. And since a lot of her damage comes from her barrages, where most of her barrages are tossed into the abyss. On mobs though, since she doesn't have to specialize against any specific armor type, she deals the most consistent damage against mixed enemies, which is really noticeable in Chapter 13 and 14. Wakatsuki is also up here because while her medium and heavy DPS are not as good as Kitakaze's, all of her barrages are aimed and go through shields, making her potentially better if there's an abundance of light enemies or if there are a lot of shields. She's also tankier than Kitakaze and she has really good anti-submarine warfare, which is only really relevant in 14.3 and 14.4, but that's a huge use case for destroyers these days. Next is Jervis, who is the only capable destroyer tank. She also has really good anti-submarine, so she can take care of both tanking and anti-submarine in Chapter 14 by herself, while also healing your other vanguards. This role compression makes her an extremely valuable member of the Chapter 14 carry fleet. She's a very good tank for anything outside of bosses, but she can even tank bosses with a bit of help from someone like Lusty or John. And then finally we have her sister Janus. Her damage is actually severely underrated just because she doesn't have 2 main guns, but if you look closely, her barrages and torps are much stronger than most of the destroyers who have 2 main guns, and you really have to use her to see her potential. She also has great synergy with Jervis and has the highest anti-submarine stat in the game, making her a really solid option for Chapter 14. In the end though, she is pretty much a torp ship, so to get the most out of her, you'll probably want to aim her torps. Now at this point, you might be calling me biased, but to that I say, go make your own tier list. Honestly, with how cute she is, I probably should have put her in SS tier. Okay, and now we're on to the A tier, and most people probably clicked off the video. If you're one of those people who think that everything below the second tier of a tier list is unusable, then you've got a condition called tier list brain, and you should probably get it checked out before it seeps into your everyday life. On the other hand, there's a saying that goes waifu over meta, and if you feel that way about destroyers, then you should probably turn yourself in for the good of humanity. Regardless though, you might have noticed that there's a tier called cute, and yes, I actually use even those ships. Anyway, getting back on track, Suzuki is pretty much a dated version of Wakatsuki. She's slightly tankier, but her barrages get blocked by shields and are not aimed. She technically has higher gun damage than Wakatsuki, but it means absolutely nothing when her damage is just worse. Her anti-submarine stat is also not particularly high. Also, Wakatsuki is cuter and has a better voice. Despite all of that though, she's still quite serviceable, and if you like her, then you won't really have too hard of a time finding use for her. And then we've got the good old, not reliable Ayanami. She's still pretty good, but she's no Shimakaze. Even with the augment, I don't think she's a better torp ship than Janus. She's pretty much like the top 5 most popular ships though, so I'm pretty sure she's not going to be starving for attention anytime soon. And then we have the Summoner class, who deal decent damage in the mob fleet while having some utility, and don't fall over very easily. They're kind of well-rounded, but not really exceptional in any way, and they have some varying anti-air or other utility, but their damage is super reliant on their barrages, so they're not very good in bosses. Unless you're against some high evasion boss and you can hit Bristol's debuff, which is pretty much relegated to manual use only. And next is Charles Osborne, and I must confess, I have never used her in my life, but I'm pretty sure that she should be right about there. Don't quote me on this though. And finally, we're in the B tier, and Naganami and Kasumi are decent torp buffers that are obviously outshone by some of the better torp DDs, and Tashkent and Kiev do decent damage against light armored enemies and then fall off a cliff against medium, and might as well heal heavy armored enemies. And even against light, they do like half the damage of the DDGs, so they're relegated to just B tier. Yukikaze is pretty outdated, and her tankiness and damage are not really up to par anymore, but she could still be useful for her main fleet protection at times. And Z46 is pretty much the worst ship that I decided to toss on here. I should mention that Z23 is probably over here as well with the new augment. And as for the SSR French DDs, I haven't really used them, but they probably get into B tier at most. And that about wraps up this tier list. As always, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and let me know which hull I should do next. If this video gets a bad reception, I think I'm just gonna terminate my channel, so go ahead and give me your worst. See you in the next one, possibly.